Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the X-17 prototype trauma harness, and that's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we are going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So let's get right in. What this character is going to be about is we are basically creating kind of a character, so to speak. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, in Fallout New Vegas there was the Old World Blues DLC, and in that DLC one of the enemies you typically encountered were these so-called trauma harnesses. The law behind trauma harnesses was that those were basically kind of, harnesses created by those scientists in Big Mountain with the purpose of basically retrieving injured soldiers and so on from battlefields, keeping them alive in the process, basically walking for them, doing pretty much everything for the soldier or the wounded medical staff or whatever, keeping them alive until they are back in camp and so on. And yeah, in the process it didn't really turn out all that well. What happened is that the harnesses, the suits, didn't really do a great job in recognizing if the soldier or anything died. So basically what you will see in the DLC is all those suits walking around with skeletons inside them, still pretty much acting like they have to protect the person inside. And yeah, the idea behind this was pretty straightforward here. We have this Scale Scream Power Armor skin from the current scoreboard, and yeah, I don't know, like, look at the thing. It instantly reminded me of those enemies, and I think it's a rather interesting explanation to why we have this thing, rather than actually making it like this super odd futuristic thing. I don't know how to explain it, but I think you get the point. Now, to get a little bit more into detail about the character, what this character is going to be about is we are playing obviously as a power armor heavy gunner. I think you figured that part out already. And we are focusing on high tech energy weaponry. In this case we are using a junkies faster fire rate plasma Gatling Plasma, which is a weapon I oddly enough have never shown off on this channel before, in no way. Despite it being a super cool weapon, and I really liked it, and it was basically my favorite weapon just from the around the time the trailer dropped back in the days. It's just, very cool addition to the game in my opinion. And yeah, let's kill some opossums. On this occasion we don't really have the toughest fight on us, but what else? Who gives? And yeah, in addition to wielding high-powered energy weapons, what we also do is we do have a power armor suit that's basically, doing the exact same thing the trauma harnesses were expected to do, keeping us alive under all circumstances. Now, one very straightforward piece here is obviously that we are going to use the Born Survivor perk, and also we do invest quite a bit into making our chems, our stim packs to be more precise, more effective. So basically I'm running around with only diluted stim packs at this point, and even then they are healing me very fast and very well. So at least for the first half of their healing potential, they are working very fast. In addition to that, we do have emergency protocols on our power armor, making it so at the time that we do automatically use a stim pack, we are also very much tanky, and also do a little bit more damage due to the fact that we also have nerd rage. So from the setup, from the power armor, we're basically pretty similar to what you would expect from a bloody power armor build, despite we're not using it like that. It's basically a failsafe I also often use, but taken to the extreme. So we are already relatively tanky just by being in power armor, so that's a nice thing. We can survive most situations rather easily. But if we really get swarmed by tougher enemies and get taken down to a certain level of health, we become nigh immortal and also gain power for that. So really the toughest situations is where this character shines the most. And in all the other situations, as you can see here, we do have damage output aplenty, just by wielding a pretty solid weapon to begin with. Now I was tempted for a while to use the Gatling Plasma as a flamer, just because I have a feeling that a lot of people have never really seen, I mean, maybe not many, but there's still, I'm sure, a few people who never really seen the Gatling Plasma with the beam splitter modification unless it was a legacy weapon. So time and time again I do actually read about that when people say they had no clue that this weapon existed once they saw it, just because, yeah, typically when people put a beam splitter on their Gatling Plasma, it's because they have an explosive version of it, and that just makes it this yeah, multi-projectile death machine that we all know. But yeah, pretty much everyone who uses a regular Gatling Plasma doesn't really bother with the flamer modification, and that's basically, yeah, true for me as well. As I said, I was tempted to use it just to show it off, but it didn't really, yeah, satisfy me. It's just, it somehow loses out so much damage in the process, despite it saying it does actually more damage. I mean, you could say that it is because it actually splits up your projectiles and therefore you have less armor penetration, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem considering we do have stabilized. And yeah, I think it's just some weird stuff with hit detection, and on top of that you just don't have a lot of range. It just tends to glitch out pretty easily. So yeah, I decided against it, despite it being really cool in terms of visuals. But I think, yeah, it still is a very cool weapon, just using it like this here. Kind of missed the reload here, but we're not in danger at all. So on this occasion maybe we will have the Assaultron, but that shouldn't be any trouble whatsoever, just because it's actually going to heal us. Obviously we are going to have the legendary perk Electric Absorption, and you're now seeing it in action. We're basically back to full health and this guy can't damage us whatsoever. And really, I love this build. I had a ton of fun with it. I have a full suit of power armor that actually has the legendary effect, making our stimpaks even more efficient. Also red away and stuff, but even in nuke zones you don't really need red away, just because we also have ward rats. So this character is basically meant to keep you alive without you ever bothering to invest into it. Like, you don't have to take a single stimpak if you don't want to. You never have to take a red X or red away or anything, and you're just going to do fine. In addition to that, another little tidbit I wanted to do with this character is make it quite a lot more intelligent than I usually do, just for the simple reason that, yeah, the ammo this weapon uses is first and foremost very efficient to begin with. We have primed the weapon, so that's probably the best thing you can do about it. Obviously it's going to improve your damage, and as it is typical with energy weapons, it improves your damage quite significantly. But on top of that, yeah, it makes ammo way more efficient, because you're crafting a few standard plasma cores, and just with adding a little bit of flux and so on, you will then make even more plasma cores, ultraside plasma cores out of it. And the interesting part about it is something a lot of people know about nowadays, but I figured I mention it either way. Depending on your intelligence, you can actually craft ultraside fusion cores or ultraside plasma cores or standard plasma cores with a charge higher than 100%. This theoretically goes up to 200%. We don't really reach that with this character here unless we do a little bit of extra stuff. But yeah, high intelligence, very beneficial when crafting ammo for this guy, making it basically so you can pretty much double your ammo efficiency, and also cutting your reload amount of reloads in half in the process. So I think typically you get like 250 shots per plasma core, and yeah, as I said, up to 200% you can theoretically craft plasma cores with up to 500 shots, which is very nice. And a very cool feature. I wish there was more stuff like this in Fallout 76, but yeah, it's a good step in the right direction, even though I'm not quite sure if it was actually intentional or not. Another thing I haven't really talked about here is chems that we can use. And you have already seen it in the beginning of the video, but I'm using berry methods here. There's two distinct reasons I do that. Firstly, in the last few videos I typically used way more consumables than I usually do, and this one I wanted to show its better potential just from how it is without any buffs and whatsoever. So I decided for berry methods here because they actually don't really have any gameplay difference to me. They increase our intelligence by 5, which is quite significant, but more importantly for me on this occasion is they do give you this like purple violet visual blur around enemies, which I think yeah, it works very well with this character. It just brings home this sci-fi feeling for some reason. I can't really explain it. The other reason I do like berry methods here is, as I just said, we want to have relatively high intelligence when crafting, so you can just pop them. And yeah, ultimately another big thing is obviously you're getting a ton of experience with this character. One thing I will say just right up now, because I don't really have a lot to say about the performance of the character. I think you see it, it's pretty good. The weapon is very, very good. I really love it. It's one of the more powerful weapons in the game. It's not really, the character isn't really maxed out completely when it comes to intelligence. There's two big factors I could see relatively easily implemented. The first one is I'm currently not using the egghead mutation, which I would definitely do, but I am on a custom world. This character here does not have the ability to craft the egghead mutation, so I can't really bring it to this character from another character. As I said, I'm on custom worlds, and I don't really want to server hop the White Springs bunker until I get the egghead mutation. So yeah, keep that in mind. That would be like 6 more intelligence right off the get-go. And another thing is I don't really have class freak, so I do have quite a significant debuff to my intelligence from the marsupial mutation. We're talking about -4 intelligence here, and yeah, I was tempted to use class freak, but ultimately the only real downside would be from said marsupial debuff, and ultimately I found that yeah, having a debuff, having 3 perk points of investment into class freak to get my intelligence up by 3 ultimately, yeah, I didn't really feel well on this occasion. Now obviously if you have access to other legendary perks, I will say that later on. For once we only have 1 legendary perk that gives us extra stats, the rest is other stuff I will go over in a second. Yeah, you can leave out some of the other stuff. One noteworthy mention here is I do have the survival shortcut legendary perk just because I felt it appropriate to have a super chem on me. But that one's completely optional, and I found that I never really used it, so you could just use that in order to give yourself 3 more luck and use class freak. But yeah, that's basically it. And as for the rest, yeah, I think you get the point here. It's a pretty powerful build just because the weapon in and of itself is pretty great. Junkies isn't really the most desirable legendary effect nowadays. I just felt it was very fitting for the character, being basically in a suit that constantly pumps us full with stimpaks and everything. So that's a nice thing. And just because I wanted to have maxed out intelligence, for once I do have 1 perk I haven't really mentioned ever before, I think, and that is Power Patcher, meaning that our power armor breaks slower. Now I usually tend to get away from that perk just because it seems overkill in a lot of situations. Power armor tends to break very slowly, and yeah, I never really have a problem not using that perk, but on this occasion it basically makes it so you pretty much never have to repair your power armor. Pretty straightforward here. We just had to fill our intelligence with something, right? But yeah. Alright, there's another guy. Thanks to our berry mantids. We actually saw him. Those berry mantids, by the way, are relatively common. Like, I often see them in player vendors for relatively cheap. I tend to have a lot of them on one of my characters for some reason, so yeah, I think you can definitely keep them up. But keep in mind, if you want to have more damage, you are very well spec'd into using chems. We do have Chem Fiend and Chem Resistance, so you can easily use stuff like Psycho Buff and so on if you want to have more damage. But I never really felt like that was necessary. Maybe in a queen fight or something like that it would be nice to have, but other than that, you don't really need it. And yeah, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the gameplay so far, and now we're going to take a look at the build itself. Starting off with our effects. Now here you can see we do have 6 addictions. We do have Buff Out, Day Tripper, Fury, Overdrive, and Psycho. And one thing you probably know already is why do I have 6 addictions? 5 would be enough to max out our damage buff from junkies. The reason here is that I either ran with berry mantids in a lot of situations, just so I can get the intelligence buff and these highlighting living targets, and sometimes I used psycho addiction. So having 6 addictions on this occasion makes it so no matter which of the 2 I am currently using, I still have 5 addictions I'm actually suffering from, so I get the full buff from my Gatling Plasma. Pretty straightforward like that. As you can see there's a lot of debuffs, but to be honest, nothing that actually damages us too much. The nice thing about this character is, with the exception of intelligence, there's not a single stat we use during combat. Like, we don't need agility like so many characters do in order to stay tanky or stay in vets or something like that, or stay sneaky. We don't need strength because it doesn't affect our our damage output. It's only affecting our carry weight, and carry weight is great with this character. So yeah, no luck because we don't use vets. It's just pretty straightforward. Endurance obviously could be higher always, but on the other side, we do have quite a hefty debuff to our endurance from Egghead if we want to use that. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's all I'm saying. Perception we don't need, and so on. You get the point, I guess. Looking at the mutations, here we do have them. We do have Adrenal Reaction, Bird Bones, Eagle Eyes, Marsupial, Scaly Skin, and Speed Demon. Right off the bat, Eagle Eyes is completely useless here. It's just a leftover from another build, and I didn't really want to risk to remove all of my mutations just to get rid of that one, because the only thing it does is it reduces our carry weight in all actuality. So just keep in mind, if you want to do this character from scratch, Eagle Eyes wouldn't be there. We're not using any of the perception or the crit damage. Obviously we're not using that, so this is kind of pointless, but the rest here all has its purpose. Adrenal Reaction just further improves on what I was saying earlier, and what you will see in a second when we are talking about the perks. Yeah, we basically have this point where we automatically use our stim pack, and that's when we are in a little bit of trouble. But at the same point, even if there is a ton of enemies like punching down on us, and the stim pack is not enough to keep us alive, we do get more tanky at that moment, and we do get more damage output at that moment, at the expense of like 50 health points. But that doesn't matter. You saw it during the video. Our health was not a problem whatsoever. So yeah, it's just yet another bit that adds to our failsafe. Then we do have Bird Bones, which might initially seem like a little bit of a lost cause here, because as I said earlier, we don't really need any of the stats, especially agility, for gameplay reasons. It lets us sprint a little longer, but that doesn't really matter too much here. The reason I'm using it is for the reduced fall speed, and I said that in a ton of other videos. In power armor, I often like to have Bird Bones just because it makes it so when I'm jumping with Marsupial, I'm not always getting into this power armor landing animation, which just slows down your gameplay in my opinion, and that's why I don't really like it. So that's why Bird Bones is here. Then we go over to it, Marsupial, as I just said, more jump height, which is very nice. You don't want to live without it once you had it, and yeah, that's basically the point of it. Extra carry weight is kind of nice, but doesn't really matter too much here. The point is jump height. Then we do have Scaly Skin, extra resistances at the cost of a little less AP. Now, as I said in the beginning, we don't really need AP for anything other than sprinting, so yeah, we can definitely live with the debuff. And damage and energy resistance being increased is kind of a lost cause here, just because we are already in power armor and are already very high above the point of diminishing returns when it comes to armor rating. But yet again, it doesn't really hurt us too much, so might as well have it for just a little bit of extra resistances. And lastly, we do have Speed Demon. This one's quite self-explanatory. Extra movement speed is always nice. You just feel so slow if you don't have Speed Demon. And reload speed also is very nice. Now, obviously, you don't really have to reload all that often with this character. You do have quite the ammo capacity on this weapon. As I said, up to 500 shots. Maybe you can go even higher, but I'm pretty sure that's the limit. But still, yeah, quite a lot of shots. Reload never is going to be your problem. That being said, let's go over to the equipment, and here we have it. This is our Junkies faster fire rate Gatling Plasma. Obviously it's primed, as I said. We do have the rifled barrel, which gives us a little bit more range, and I think it gives us a little bit more accuracy as well. In terms of the magazine, you see standard magazine there, but there's not a modification I know of, at least. Then we do have the reflex sight. This one's kind of unnecessary. Oftentimes I find myself hip firing, but on the other side, sometimes I do aim down sights, and with the reflex sight it definitely looks a bit nicer. And lastly, we do have the beam focuser for, yet again, a bit more accuracy and letting us control the weapon a little better, in my opinion. I do have the Valorous Alistair paint. That's from the last season, I think. Very nice paint job. I really like it. It's pretty minimalistic. It just adds this few little light blue, turquoise, aquamarine. I'm not sure what the right term is in English. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's just a little bit of a blue finish, to be honest, but works perfectly well with the color of the weapon's projectiles, in my opinion, and with the whole character in and of itself. So yeah, not a lot to say here in terms of condition. It's kind of bad, to be honest. I didn't really have room or wanted to make room for Gunsmith. But it's definitely something you can keep in mind. I already said that I do have Power Patcher here, so you can easily switch that out with rank 3 of Gunsmith if you want. However, this is quite a high quality item in my opinion, and I'm guessing, yeah, you're probably not going to be too bothered by the reload. It's not that crazy either. It's just something to keep in mind with this weapon. And yeah, 151 energy damage is pretty crazy, obviously, for a weapon that shoots like 500 shots in rapid succession. I mean, compare this to something like a laser rifle or so. Yeah, definitely a good weapon in my opinion. Going over to the armor, not a lot to say here. In terms of the helmet, we do have internal database just to further increase our intelligence. You could also do it that your helmet highlights living targets. I think the modification there would be targeting visor or something like that. But yeah, I went with some extra intelligence. A red headlamp. In a perfect world I would love purple, I guess, but obviously, honestly, it doesn't do too much here. If you look at the character, it just changes the color of the eyes a little bit, but that could be really cool. I just had red though, so I went with that. And the rest, pretty mixed matched stuff. We do have a Mutant Slayer's AP refresh piece with Stimpaks, Redaways, and Redex are more effective. Now, the last effect, that's something I wanted to have on every single piece, and I did. I do have 2 Mutant Slayers pieces and 3 Troubleshooters pieces, which is kind of nice. And the rest is kind of all over the place, a little bit less hunger and thirst. Bit of extra charisma, which is ultimately very useless, environmental disease resistance, and radiation resistance. So really the only noteworthy secondary effect is the AP refresh on this one here. Only really nice though when it comes to sprinting. Other than that, we don't really utilize it. One thing to keep in mind is what would be beneficial. Obviously you can't craft ammo while in power armor, so one thing that could be interesting with this character is to have a shielded lining casual under armor with you, just to get a little bit of an intelligence boost when crafting, and maybe even a full set of unyielding armor. You would have to unequip your Born Survivor perk though for that, or yeah, just a set with extra intelligence and something. There's a lot you can do in terms of improving your intelligence outside of power armor, and don't forget your berry methods, obviously. That being said, we're taking a look at our perks, and to no one's surprise probably, strength is maxed out at 15. We do have traveling pharmacy. Now, oftentimes when I am in power armor, I do need traveling pharmacy to move around, just because my characters tend to have a ton of chems on them that they not really use in any capacity. But on this occasion it actually made sense as well, fitting the character, just because yeah, our whole theme is to carry a lot of chems with us. And yeah, other than that, we do have all the heavy gunner perks maxed out just because we could and wanted to have extra damage. After all, that's pretty much it. We're not having a ton of other stuff improving our damage output. And lastly, we do have Pain Train. Now this one is a little bit hit or miss. You don't really need it, obviously. I just found that due to the weapon being a charge up weapon, meaning you have to wait a little bit before you can shoot. Oftentimes fighting stuff like mole rats and so on, Pain Train was a easy solution, a simple solution to deal with enemies that are yeah, just kind of a nuisance more than a threat, to be honest. And also I do love Pain Train. It's actually quite powerful. Like taking the White Spring Golf Course for example, you can pretty much clear out the entire place just by sprinting around a few times. So I quite like it. It's just a little bit buggy lately. I felt like it didn't really register all that much, but yeah. Other noteworthy mentions would be bare arms. That would make it so you can use a multitude of very different heavy weapons. There are quite a few. The plasma caster would be pretty fitting. Now, to be more precise, trauma harnesses in Fallout New Vegas could carry quite a variety of different energy weapons, and at higher levels they tend to carry stuff like heavy energy weapons, Gatling lasers, plasma casters, even Tesla cannons and so on. So yeah, it would be rather fitting to go with these kind of weapons as we did here. The only one they actually didn't really use was the Gatling Plasma, just because it wasn't a thing in Fallout New Vegas. But I felt like that's the exact reason I wanted to have it here, because after all, we're not a trauma harness. We are a prototype and even enhanced version, using power armor, heavier weapons, and so on. So yeah, long story short, bare arms would probably be a nice decision, making you being able to use ultrasight Gatling lasers and so on. Or you could even go for lock and load. Although I think that would be a little bit of a lost cause, but ultimately you can use whatever you like. I went for Pain Train here. As for perception, we do have fire in the hole at rank 1. There's just nothing we really need in perception, and if we just have 1 point, there's not a lot that is too beneficial to us. I went with fire in the hole just because there's quite a few cool grenades that fit the character relatively well. Now, we're not spec'd to use them at all, but stuff like pulse grenades and plasma grenades can still be relatively powerful and a lot of fun to use. And with fire in the hole, we can throw them a little bit further, but mainly we do get the throwing arc, which kind of fits yet again, feeling like it's a visual enhancement to your reflexes or something from the power armor. I think you get the point. Then we go over to endurance. We do have chem resistance and chem fiend. For once we don't have fireproof, and the reason is that with this character you're not going to be one hit by any explosion. There's pretty much no being one hit, surprisingly, that's the main reason I always have fireproof. It's not that there's any enemies that have consistent high levels of explosive damage you have to shield from. You just don't want to be frustratingly one hit by stuff. By exploding cars, super mutant suiciders, or exploding Mr. Gutsy's legendary ones. So yeah, on this occasion that's just not going to happen, and therefore I had room to use other stuff, and what I went with was Chem Fiend and Chem Resistant. You're now completely immune to getting chem addictions. Keep in mind, we do want to have some addictions, so what you want to do is choose your addictions that you want to have, and then get addicted to them, then use Chem Resistance, and at that point you can just use whatever chem you want to use without having to worry about getting addicted to it, with the exception of alcohol. That would be another perk. but I've found that there wasn't a single alcohol that really was beneficial here. I mean, high voltage Hefe probably would be interesting, but yeah, other than that, nothing too interesting there. And then we do have Camphiene. This one is a bit more obvious here. 100% longer chem duration. Just, yeah, if you want to use chems, this is probably the most beneficial perk you can think of, just doubling their duration. That means we are left with Charisma, and this also is pretty different to what you usually see here in my builds. Usually you see either Lone Wanderer, Tenderizer, or a combination of both. On this occasion I felt like damage output was good enough. Obviously Tenderizer would be good, but it's always good, so yeah, we can live without it, and that's why we did. Same with Lone Wanderer. No extra tankiness needed, no extra AP refresh needed. So yeah, what I went with was Field Surgeon, making my Stimpaks and right away work much more quickly, and this just fits perfectly with the whole theme of making our chems more efficient and making our character, yeah, just work better overall. Pretty straightforward. And yeah, then we go over to Intelligence. Here we have it, First Aid. Pretty much all I said about Field Surgeon also hits home here, but this case just gives us flat out more healing from our Stimpaks. As I said, I was only running around with diluted Stimpaks just to showcase how easy it is to keep a big stack of healing items on you on this character, because obviously once you're once you're crafting diluted Stimpaks, you can just double, effectively even more than double your amount of healing items if you factor in stuff like Super Duper and so on. So yeah, it makes it very easy to have a ton of Stimpaks. Most likely you will end up with way more standard and super Stimpaks over time, and obviously once you use super Stimpaks on your character, this guy is pretty much immortal, with probably the only exception being other players in PvP, but yeah, not that I need to say that, I guess. Then we do have Nerd Rage. This one is one of the perks I have talked quite a lot about during the video. Yet again, a little bit more to our failsafe. Probably even overkill, but yeah, it just gives us more tankiness and more damage and a little bit more AP regen, but that's kind of not the point here. When we are at 20% health, meaning at the point where our Born Survivor perk kicks in. So yeah, this is just if for some reason think about multiple damage over time projectiles from Mylar Queens or Legendary Mylar Kings, for example, kick in and out damage our healing. You will have time to react and just pump some more Stimpaks into yourself. You can easily out heal sooner or later. Then we do have Stabilize. This one was pretty obvious here. Better accuracy and better armor penetration for our heavy guns, which we are using here. Yeah, no reason not to use Stabilized. It's such a great perk if you have the circumstances to utilize it, that yeah, you should never run without it, in my opinion. Then we do have Batteries Included. This one's a little bit more obvious than some of the other perks here. Yeah, we're using cores which are pretty heavy, 1 pound each per plasma core. You want to carry quite a few of those, and potentially even more than quite a few. In addition to that, you want to carry quite a few fusion cores with you. Despite one thing that should be said, due to having not using any high amounts of action points and having the electric absorption perk, in terms of fusion cores, 2, maybe 3 of them will probably last you forever. The only thing that really drains our fusion cores a little bit is Dodgy, but even then I found that yeah, I wasn't really going down with the amount of fusion cores I had, so yeah, keep that in mind. And lastly, Power Patcher. You see here that it is at rank 2, but if I just unequip it, you see we have 3 points left. Yeah, I just didn't really bother to wait for my level up, despite now having it, as you can see there. Yeah, obviously you want to have that maxed out, but I felt like I could just start recording the video, because to be honest, this doesn't make a difference in the gameplay I'm showing you here. So yeah, obviously this should be maxed out, which we can do now just for the sake of it, so you can see the right description here. Power Patcher at rank 3, completely maxed out. yeah, 60% longer duration on your power armor basically, and it's cheaper to repair in addition to that. Going over to agility, which is pretty low. Very rarely do you see characters of mine have lower agility than 7, and I think it's kind of the case for a lot of players. Agility just always has some good stuff to use, and on this occasion, another perk that's missing from compared to a lot of my other builds is Adrenaline, which I'm pretty much always using just because it, yet again, is such a universally good perk. But all of this is just detriment, in my opinion, to how good the weapon is. You really don't need stuff like Tenderizer or Adrenaline to make you feel powerful, in my opinion. And it left us with making us more tanky with Dodgy, despite not having a lot of action points. It does help in certain situations. Just in prolonged fights where we take constant damage, it starts to get a little bit unnecessary, because it's not going to happen all that help us all that much anymore with our action points constantly being low. But for pot shots here and there, as I said, for stuff like unexpected explosions and so on, it's a very nice perk, synergizing well with Action Boy. That's pretty much the only thing, except for the powered armor piece that we do have, that helps us with our action point refresh. And lastly, we do have Born Survivor. Now, I was tempted to go higher with it just to bring home the point of the character, but just because our stim packs are so effective here, keep in mind we're talking about First Aid giving us 45% more effectiveness than 5 pieces of armor that give us 5% each. So overall, we have 70% more effective stim packs, and they work quicker. Yeah, 20% health was easily enough of a time span, I say, to react with our stim packs. We definitely don't need higher amounts of Born Survivor. Pretty straightforward here. A nice combination you could go for is one auto stim power armor piece and rank 2 of Born Survivor. This would bring home the point like 100%. At that point we do have 2 different fail safes combined with the fail safe of Nerd Rage, emergency protocols and everything. Yeah, that would just even make you more immortal, in my opinion. That leaves us with Luck, where we do have 1 gun army, a little bit of a stagger chance, a little bit of a cripple chance. In all reality, it's lower than 12% as far as I know, just because we are using automatic weapons here. It definitely feels lower, but still, it's a chance to cripple enemies and stagger them a little bit. Definitely helps when fighting stuff like Mylar Queens, Sheep Squatches, and so on. And lastly, Starch Genes to keep our mutations and not get any new ones, like this had to be here, right? And that leaves us with our legendary perks, and the only one here, as I said earlier, that's just increasing our stats, is Legendary Intelligence. We do have Intelligence maxed out at 15 already, so this brings us up to 20, not factoring in any debuffs from Marsupial and so on. But yeah, I talked a lot about why Intelligence is interesting on this character, despite the obvious advantage of getting more experience. Then we do have Power Armor Reboot. This is just basically the perfect legendary perk for the idea of the character here. A armor set keeping us alive, so even if by any chance we should get downed once, we do have a chance to be revived with full health. Obviously you can max this out and make it way more efficient. However, I haven't once had it in action. I just really wanted to have it here because it fits the character so well, as, yeah, just view it as yet another failsafe. Then we do have Survival Shortcut. This is the one I said earlier. I wouldn't really focus too much on it. It's in no way necessary. As I said, you have very effective stim packs to work with, so you don't really need it. I just wanted to have a super cam on this character just because it felt fitting. But if you want to raise any of your stats for stuff like, as I said, Class Freak maybe, or yeah, there's a ton of options you could go for here if you really want to have Tenderizer and so on. Yeah, just ditch Survival Shortcut and rather use a stat buff. But I felt like, yeah, I wanted to have a super cam here. Then we do have Funky Dots. We do have a matching set of Ultrasight Power Armor, so Funky Dots definitely gives us 100 poison damage resistance, and rank 2 of it is really where you start to see a benefit from it, making a lot of damage over time enemies irrelevant at that point. but obviously maxing it out would be just more beneficial. And but yeah, rank 2 is kind of enough to really confidently do daily ops with the poison hazard mutation. Then we do have electric absorption. Now this is one I don't feel like I have to say all that much about, just because it's on so many characters. Pretty much every single power armor character I do have. It's just way too good. Chance to recharge your fusion cores is nice, and chance to heal, which isn't stated here, when being attacked by a energy weapon. And you saw it when we were fighting the assault drone there. It's just straight up healing us completely. So yeah, it renders certain enemies irrelevant. Talk about every single human enemy with the Gatling laser, for example, or a flamer and so on. Yeah, just a super good perk. And lastly, we do have ward rats. Now we definitely have pretty good healing going on from red away and stuff, just because it also is affected by the legendary effect on our armor. So yeah, ward rats isn't necessary in my eyes. You are in power armor after all, so you're not taking a lot of red damage to begin with, and you can easily heal it off. But it just wanted to, yeah, it further brings home the point of the character keeping you completely alive and safe in my eyes, so I felt rather fitting. And yet again, we have to worry a little less about using chems and everything, using healing items. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build. This one is one I really enjoyed, just because it was so wholesome when it comes to the role playing of it. It's just a pretty different approach. I mean, it has a lot of aspects I have had in other builds. Talk about Bone Survivor in combination with Nerd Rage and so on. I did this in the past, definitely. But really going all in on these kind of intelligence perks for once was a nice thing. Was really fitting. And yeah, yet again, look at that guy. I just really think about Trauma Harness when looking at the Skeleton armor set. What should I say? I really liked it, and it's one of my favorite builds in quite a while, I would say. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and see you next time. Bye.